I have a virtual background. I wonder if it'll work.
Ooh, try it.
Go for it.
Gonna. It's for Zoom, so who knows?
Oh, well, then it'll...
It may not cooperate. It's better than my husband's baseball junk in the background.
I gotta tell you, it's been long enough that I've forgotten everything that we do. All the tech stuff for this, I've completely forgotten.
I get it. Oh, hello, everybody. No one's seeing us yet, but hey, we're still doing it. And here is now I gotta figure out a way to share it to the dadgum with Facebook's latest revamp. The simplicity of streaming directly to the thing, directly to the Facebook, is working, but like I can't see it. But I know it's happening because somebody's watching us.
I think I broke StreamYard.
There we are.
I tried to change the background and now I'm just gone.
Yeah, I had to. It cut off all the video and everything for me too. I had to restart it. So,
well, here we are. Anyways, guys, welcome. It is Thursday night. It is you're on the American Sci-Fi Classics Track, and it is time for a quarantine panel. We had been doing these every couple of weeks, but this topic was so big, we decided to do 2 in a row. I guess technically 3 in a row because we're going to do one next week at our usual time period. But anywho's, tonight we are doing another Fellowship of the Ring panel with a completely different crew, except for me. But everyone's heard all of my Lord of the Rings things. Have you? I don't know. Let's talk to everybody else. Welcome, Darin.
Hello, Joe.
How many times have you read Fellowship of the Ring?
Well, less than 1,000. I have the unabridged audiobooks by Robert Inglis, and I've listened to Inglis's version of Lord of the Rings about, I would say on average, about once every other year for decades.
Sherman, Legolas or Gimli?
Gimli, definitely.
Okay. Kevin, Gimli or Boromir?
Gimli or Boromir? I'm going to go Gimli.
All right. That's 2 Gimlis. Beth. Gimli or I'm going to say Galadriel.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm going to have to go Galadriel.
Okay, that's fair enough. I as I said it, I realized, man, but that's Galadriel. Okay. Anywho, well, I almost got a clean sweep of Gimlis. Darin, Gimli, or that mean person who scowls at Gandalf as he rides into town at the beginning of the movie on his wagon.
I'm going to go with Gimli because he has
Okay. Fair enough. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're talking about Fellowship of the Ring. This year is the 20th anniversary of a movie that, prior to that, no one really thought was ever going to actually exist or that it would happen in any way. I'll go around the horn. Everybody tell, I guess, your background with Lord of the Rings. Where were you when you first saw this movie? Sherman.
I was, let's see, that would have been about 2001. I was working as a drafter, but I had read The Hobbit in high school, and I had seen The Lord of the Rings and Return of the King, the Rankin Bass version. I didn't see the Ralph Bakshi version until much later. Yeah.
And Darin.
I was exposed to The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings when I was a kid by my nerd parents, And so when they announced they were going to make the movie, I was very excited about it for a long time before it came out. So I saw it in the theater probably 3 times.
Oh, dang. Yeah. Yeah. Well, me too. Kevin.
I read The Hobbit when I was in like 4th grade. And then after that, I expressed interest in reading Lord of the Rings, and some of the older Dungeons and Dragons kids in the neighborhood said that I was too young to read Lord of the Rings. And there is no better way to get a little kid to do something than to tell them that they are too young to do it. So I read Lord of the Rings when I was in 4th grade. I did not understand Lord of the Rings when I was in 4th grade, but I read it. And I went back to, I picked up some things. I saw the Bakshi cartoon and I liked that and got into Dungeons and Dragons and read it again in high school and picked up more of it and kind of revisited it. I've revisited it maybe every 10 years. I was fully excited for this movie when it came out. I was so jazzed that Peter Jackson was doing it because I thought Heavenly Creatures was just one of the best movies of the 90s. And having it be the person who made Heavenly Creatures and also the person who made Meet the Feebles and Bad Taste and Dead Alive, I was like, this man has never made a bad movie. He has since the Lord of the Rings movies. But when it was coming out, I went and I was blown away by how good it was. It was beyond my wildest dreams of how good this Lord of the Rings movie was.
And indeed. And we'll circle back to that. Much like the shape of the ring. Boom. Beth, tell us about your Fellowship of the Ring experience.
Well, I also had The Hobbit as a book around when I was a kid and read it when I was quite young, and did not attempt to read Lord of the Rings when I was very young because my parents and I now have a copy of it all in one book. And so for a 10, 12-year-old, that's an intimidating read, and it's dense. So I did not read The Lord of the Rings until I was a teenager, and since then I read it once a year, and I watch the entire trilogy once a year. But I was not at the front row, but in the middle of the theater the day it opened, and so front row is not great for a movie like that. You need the middle.
Really?
So I saw it multiple times in the theater, and the only reason I haven't gone back to see all of them play in the theater when they do those marathons is because 12 hours is a long time when I own all those movies already.
Yeah. I appreciate the effort. I appreciate and buddies of mine do it. My experience with it was, because I'm an idiot, I have not read, at the time, I had not read everything. And then I decided, well, I'll be that guy who doesn't know what's happening when I watch those movies. So after, I waited until after seeing Fellowship to read Fellowship. But anywho, I worked with a buddy of mine in fact, the first geek journalism job that I had, which really led to all of this, was with Shane Ivey, and he and his wife I don't know how many times they saw it when it first came out. Probably, I would say, a lot. And they, at some point, I believe, also went to one of those all day long marathon things. And congratulations to them. Don't know that I would have done it. Maybe I probably would have done it. I chickened out. I don't know. Kudos to anyone who has the posterior fortitude to make it through that, but not me.
So real quick, Sherman, I told my wife I got to watch Fellowship of the Ring again for a panel for Joe, and she's like, all right, let's watch it. So we watched it. We got to the end of it. I said, okay, what do you want to do now? And she goes, get Two Towers. I was like, twist my arm. Okay. About a day and a half later, I woke up from the popcorn coma. We'd watched all 12 hours in one go, not in one sitting, because that's just not possible.
It's not.
Not for me. So sorry, Sherman. I just want to throw that out real quick.
I would say to prep for this, I got the 4K new ultra high def Blu-ray, and holy cow, does it look amazing. And my 7-year-old daughter came downstairs when I started watching it. And I said, I think this is too scary for you. And she was like, well, I'll be the judge of that, Daddy. And I thought the Nazgul were gonna like be a deal breaker, because this is a child who could not get 5 minutes into Labyrinth without like leaving the room. But she watched the entire Fellowship extended edition with me in 2 sittings. But I was very impressed. And now she wants to watch The Two Towers, and that's getting ahead of it. But I'm like, oh, Dead Marshes. I don't know if she can handle that.
Apparently, she's tougher than lots of 7-year-olds. You're raising a badass, Kevin.
She's a Spitfire, man.
Heck yeah. And girls are the best. Girl children. I don't know if you have boy children. Don't do that. Girl children are the best. Well, you have both, Kevin. But I think you'll agree the girl one is the best one, right?
Well, she's the one that watched Lord of the Rings with me.
Okay, well, there you go. But Fellowship of the Ring, me and Shane, and we were kind of boots on the ground as the thing was being filmed. We launched a sci-fi website. It was called zealot.com, and that was all the news. There were only like 2 news websites at the time, and we attempted to be the third one, except that everything was spelled correctly on ours.
That was your first mistake.
That is, you are correct, but it was wild watching it form piece by piece, and then to see the whole production, because we had all experienced. Let's talk about the crazy special effects first. We had all experienced special effects, of course, but no one prepared me for not just the hobbits themselves, but the whole thing. A lot of times, up until that point, when a movie is effects heavy, maybe you can't see the strings, but metaphorically, you can see the strings. And that didn't happen with Fellowship of the Ring. Did you have that experience, Kevin?
For most of the film, I was very impressed with the special effects, especially like in 2001, a lot of blockbusters were very CGI happy.
Yeah.
And particularly like The Phantom Menace had come out a couple years before. And for Fellowship, because they used a lot of practical effects, they used a lot of forced perspective to show the height of the hobbits. You know, there were a few CGI shots in Fellowship that I thought at the time were a little dodgy. I think Legolas jumping on the back of the cave troll, I didn't think looked that great. But overall, like, I know last week on the panel, everyone talked about the massive software to show like the big battles, which you only really see in the prologue and Fellowship, but I had never seen anything that looked like that. I was very impressed by that.
No.
Indeed. Sherman.
Well, if you've got to see Hercules and Xena in the 90s, you would have gotten a preview of the level of the technology that Weta was working with, because they did a lot of the special effects on those shows. So, yeah,
I did not know that, but yeah, and they just had a lot more money to use in Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
I had one other thing though.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, in high school, when I read The Hobbit, I drew a bookmark for it, and over the years, I've asked people if that bookmark was still there, and oftentimes they would tell me, "Yeah, that bookmark was still in there in the book. I'd drawn it in high school. I think it was in 10th grade, and it was still in there." So there you go.
Nice.
Sure, I loved Xena so much, and I remember when the Lord of the Rings movie started coming out and getting excited watching the credits and being like, "It's the same costume designer as Xena."
Yeah. That's Beth, the special effects. Or
Kevin already hit on one of my points. It's probably a surprise to everyone who knows anything about me that I like Star Wars kind of a lot.
A little bit.
Didn't know if you knew that about me, but I'm wearing an Ahsoka Tano t-shirt right now. But I was, after coming off of those movies and being so disappointed And just seeing the trailers for these, it was like, what? These couldn't have been made in the same decade, century. There's no way that we went from CGI, stupid looking, flipping, crappy cartoon Yoda to this that quickly. And it wasn't even that they had that much money. I mean, it wasn't, they didn't spend the money. They spent the money on 3 movies that a lot of movies will spend on 1.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to do that and to create all new technology was mind-blowing. So even though I do still enjoy watching them at home, having been able to see all of them in the theater was totally worth it.
I saw the first 2 in the theater, and then our daughter was born, and we didn't it was so soon after she was born that we didn't feel like we needed to be away from the house for like 3.5 hours. So we saw it later. It's fine. She's fine. She's in college.
To be fair, it was only 3.5 hours in the extended editions. I think it was only 2.5 in theater.
Well, really, yeah. So technically,
you could have done it, Joe.
I could have done it.
You're a bad nerd.
Wouldn't have felt like a negligent parent to an infant had I just gone ahead and done it.
They didn't do baby matinees then?
No admittance without someone under 17 months?
If she started crying, everybody just calls her a casual and starts berating her.
Look, the movie theater around the corner from me does this
Lord of the
thing.
Rings.
When my kids were infants, they have like a Monday afternoon, they have baby matinee. It's like bring your baby. Everyone brings their baby. They keep the lights up a little higher. It was phenomenal.
Oh my gosh. I don't think movie theaters liked children back when in the 2000s.
It's not the theaters, it's the other patrons.
So if you're keeping score, we got off track in 18 minutes. Not a record. Not a record.
Bingo cards.
Yeah, fill out your bingo cards, kids. So the thing, I'm going to answer the special effects question, Joe, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I'm just champing here. So anyway, one of the things I love about the Fellowship of the Ring is that they made such a huge deal about the special effects. The nerds, me included, were just ecstatic. Look, 10,000 orcs all on screen at the same time, and it doesn't look dumb, right? One of the things that really blew me away was if you watch the documentaries about how they make the film was how much of that stuff was practical effects. Mm-hmm. The fake double-sized Aragorn model that stood behind the hobbits in a lot of shots where the hobbits are the primary is kind of creepy. Right, it's Aragorn, but it's twice as big, and he has no head because he doesn't need one.
Oh,
right?
Tall Paul.
Yeah, right, exactly. There's all these really like somebody was joking in the comments about forced perspective. There's this great moment in one of the movies. I forget exactly which movie it was, where Gimli and Legolas are just standing next to each other, but Gimli's standing a little bit back and a little bit down, like he's down a little bit, and it looks like it's perfect. No CGI, no tricks. It's just camera shot. It's beautiful. But one of the things that I did notice the second or third time I watched it was that the very first time you see Gandalf and he's hanging out with Frodo and they're driving the cart, one of Gandalf's hands, one of his fingers kind of does something weird. It's like it goes this way when it's not supposed to because he's driving the cart. His hands are going like this. And I'm just sitting there going, I'm pretty sure that's a big puppet. With Ian McKellen's digital face, and I'm pretty sure that's a big puppet going, it's the first scene of the movie.
Well, if you look at the scene in Bree and the Prancing Pony, there's another scene. You can see the guy that walks past them. The arms are swinging unnaturally. They don't move at all. The hands and fingers don't move at all, and it's somebody walking behind them, essentially on stilts. In the Prancing Pony.
Maybe it was one of the Meet the Feebles puppets, Darin.
But it's so, very good, Kevin. But it's just, the effects are just very impressive. And I think it's really impressive that I really have to look for mistakes to find any mistakes. And that's a compliment. You can't make no mistakes.
I know one, and it wasn't, when I saw it, it did not at all ruin the movie for me. But when I first saw it, when they are in the mines, it's before, I think it's after the cave troll, before the Balrog, when they're fleeing, and they look like the characters from the arcade game Gauntlet.
Oh yeah. those were the CGI doubles. You can definitely tell because the capes don't move properly.
There's
Right.
and that was the first thing I thought of. Like, Ranger needs food badly.
Yeah.
Well, the hobbits probably needed food badly.
They did.
One of the orcs in the background was screaming, "The wizard shot the food."
But that stuck with me, but I didn't dislike it. I was like, yay, Gauntlet's a cool game. I'm glad it reminded me of it.
Well, I know on the special effects commentary track and for it, they actually point out some of their mistakes in them too. So,
oh yeah,
nobody does that. That's awesome.
Yeah. But
See,
also,
I don't want to watch that though because I like the ones I don't want to notice. I don't want to sit and nitpick it because it's such a good series of movies that I don't want to. Well, okay, it's a good trilogy because let's not talk about The Hobbit. But I don't want to notice those things if I don't pick them up. I don't want them pointed out to me because I want to remain suspended.
That's a good point, Beth, because there is an error in One Shot and Fellowship that was pointed out on a commentary track, and now every time I watch the film, I look for it.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's the worst.
Well, when I went to college for drafting, and I would read the CGI magazines and try to keep up with that. So I was always looking at it to get some idea of the state of the technology. So I didn't mind even seeing the mistakes in them. It just told me how far they had come along and how far they had to go.
See, now that's funny you say that, Sherman, because I'm an author, and so my big problem with these movies, Lord of the Rings movies, is the characterizations and the storytelling. The storytelling changes and the character changes. Well, so I watch Gandalf's finger do something it shouldn't be allowed to do, and I'm like, oh, isn't that cute? And then they give one of Gandalf's lines to another character, and I am upset.
Furious.
So is your problem? So your problem's in adaptation?
Self-censored. I'm sorry, Kevin. What?
So your problem's like in adaptation choices?
Yes.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's
really.
Would you want to have seen Tom Bombadil?
I'm a huge fan of Bombadil, and I think Beth is too. Somehow psychically, I get the sense that Beth likes Bombadil.
I've been trying so hard to hide
it. Whenever I talk, okay, so one of the things that I do every year is, sorry, Joe, I cheat on you in November, and I help run a magical fantasy convention called Conjuration, and we try and do Lord of the Rings panels at Conjuration. I try and put myself on those panels because I'm a huge fan.
Well, yeah.
And whenever we talk about Lord of the Rings, I always start off the panel by saying, all right, let me get this over with. I want Tom Bombadil in a movie. I know I'm never going to get it, but I'm still going to say that, right, and then we move on. And everybody lets me have my little hissy fit, and then we get over it. Because Bombadil is part of the mythology, and he's awesome. He's never going to make it into any of the movies. He barely makes it into the radio drama adaptations. Well,
he didn't even make it into the Rankin Bass and Bakshi versions either.
Here's my question for you, Darin.
Uh-oh.
Do you think the movie would have been better if they had added Tom Bombadil?
I think that the reason why they don't do Bombadil is because Tolkien is trying to do something very subtle and very mythological that actually isn't required for the action and the movement of the story. Mm-hmm. Right. So I don't say we need Bombadil. I say I'd love to see Bombadil. Right, because he's such a great character, and he is the biggest mystery of the whole story. If you've read the books, so he's the big mystery. So the fact that he's not in the movie is one of those things that I'm like, no, I'm never going to get that. No, I'd have to win the lottery and make my own movie, and it would not be this good. So no. But some of the adaptation problems are when thank you, ToniAnn. 5 points for your house, ToniAnn. I like that. But what ends up happening is that when they give the dialogue to a different character, my brain just goes, wait a minute, hold on. That's what? Why didn't they just? He's standing right there, right? He's in the frame when the other character says his line. Whatever. Okay. Right.
I don't. That stuff doesn't bug me as much. I figure like the books, and I love the books, or I love the book. It's hard. When I read them as a kid, they were 3 different books, and like Beth had said, I have it as one book now. But I feel like the book is its thing, and I love it, and the movies are their own thing based on that. So I don't get too upset. I know one guy I know is like a huge like Tolkien purist, and we went to the movie and he stood up in the theater when there was a change and screamed, "Oh, come on!" and stormed out. I think it was when Arwen showed up instead of
right
Glorfindel.
instead of Gildor.
Yeah,
I think it was Gildor.
Man.
I had the exact opposite experience, Kevin. When I went to go see Fellowship the first time, every single seat was filled. So I got to sit next to a complete stranger. And every few minutes she would yell out, "Oh, Jesus," because obviously she didn't have any idea what was going on. This is her first experience in any of this. Speaking of Galadriel, we get to Galadriel and she screams out, "Run!" "She's coming for you." I'm just sitting there trying to be quiet, just trying not to laugh.
I don't think I could.
I mean, I had to go back to see the movie again very soon after, a second time, so I could hear all the dialogue that I missed. Oh, geez.
I went with people like Kevin was talking about. Shane, of course, Shane Ivey, and our friend Brian Krausen. Chapter and verse, Lord of the Rings, backwards and forwards, sideways, everything. And so I could hear them like muttering under their breaths, like, "Man, that page 47, that would have been better." The whole time. Now they love the movies too, and but it's an experience to go with someone who's super into it when you are an idiot who had at the time not finished the first book.
Yeah, so, we have to have trigger warnings on our Lord of the Ring panels, because whenever we're going to talk about this, because I try so hard not to talk about this, because you lose everyone in the room. Either they're a purist and you don't go far enough, or they don't care and they want you to shush and get back to the cool stuff.
Yeah,
okay.
They jump up and go, "Come on!" and they storm out.
Like the Balrog was beautiful. I watched it again recently. I said I'd forgotten how gorgeous and beautiful the Balrog is, and it seems to be letter perfect, which is ironic because they're still arguing about whether it has wings or not.
Shadow.
Right. So there's this argument about whether the Balrog had wings. So they put wings on the Balrog in the movie, and I was cheering. I was like, "Good job, guys! He needs to have wings." Right.
But he's got a whip. He's got his whip is on fire.
And if we've learned anything from Rankin Bass, Joe, it's that where there's a whip, there's a way.
Thank you.
I think I must be one of those rare weirdos that can separate them, because I can take the books as they are and I can take the movies as they are. And, I noticed the differences because I've read and seen them both enough, but nothing really bothers me. I mean, the first time I saw it, I was like, "Who's Liv Tyler? What is she doing here?" Yeah. But it's fine for the movie. It makes sense for what they were trying to do for the movies.
Exactly. I like both things, and I want more of it. I went into the Hobbit movies feeling that way, and my mind changed, but we're not talking about that right now.
Well, it's certainly better than the Bakshi version of the Balrog with the butterfly wings. So there is that. At least.
Though, those things stuck in my head ever since. I feel like what we need to do is those 70s cartoons are one of the many things on our list of things we wouldn't need to watch with a group at DragonCon. But that's something, in fact, no, where's my list? It's in my brain. Okay.
Watch all three as a marathon.
But extended editions or just the regular theatrical editions? Because
no, I mean the cartoons.
The cartoons.
Yeah.
By the time, I think DragonCon will come and go before the Amazon Lord of the Rings show starts. Does it start in December? I don't know.
I thought it was November.
I've heard
like
good things about it.
So imagine now there's going to be people like us going, I don't know anything about this Lord of the Rings, but when it starts beaming into my house for free on my computers, then I'll get to enjoy that. But so what about some of the actors we knew already? Ian McKellen was Magneto, of course, but and the kid from Goonies, Samwise. But still, what was there a performance acting wise that surprised you? That not necessarily that that you didn't think Sean Astin from the Goonies had it in him, but Darin.
Brad Dourif as oh shoot, that's not Fellowship of the Ring. I'm sorry. I'm 3 years ahead of time. No, I thought the casting was really good. I thought Cate Blanchett as Galadriel was really spot on. Right. I thought she just looked the part and acted the part. The way she walked and the way she moved and the way she did the things with, just all the acting stuff, all the physical stuff was very Galadriel. I was very impressed with Cate Blanchett's performance. And when I found out that she was cast in the movie, I was like, oh yeah, duh, she is an elf. That's perfect.
Yeah. And the dude who played her husband has my favorite line reading in the movie where he goes, "Tell me, where is Gandalf? For I would very much like to speak with him." And I'm like, he should have gotten the Oscar for that. So,
to see him as a Russian mobster in The Equalizer was really it really messed with my head.
I mean, the poor man got cast as Galadriel's purse, so you have to give him some room there. And I don't mean that in the traditional sense. I mean that in the Lord of the Rings sense. Galadriel was in charge. Let's be clear. He was just filling a seat.
For me, you go, Joe.
Oh, I got nothing. You go.
Oh, I was gonna say, for me, the big casting revelation for Fellowship was Viggo Mortensen, because I was not super familiar with him before that movie, and I thought he was so great as Aragorn.
Yes. Well, he was filling in for Stuart Townsend, who had to drop out.
Yes.
I had never heard that before.
They filmed scenes with Stuart Townsend.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
And
so he was catching up. He was doing a lot of catching up. That was really impressed by his importance.
They had started shooting before Viggo Mortensen.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Stuart Townsend? So I don't have to Google it because what
was it? League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He was the.
There you go.
The shadow, the picture of Dorian Gray.
Yeah, got it. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So
he was Lestat in the Queen of the Damned movie too.
He was. Yes. And now that you say Sherman, you say Dorian Gray, and so that guy could have been. That could have been Aragorn.
We dodged a bullet, fam.
Boy, Kevin said what I was thinking. Oh, thank you, Kevin. No, Viggo Mortensen was somebody that I wasn't familiar with, and I saw his picture and I went, "What?" And about 7 minutes into his performance, I went, "Yeah, no, we're good. Got it." He's convinced. He convinced me very quickly. He was dark and mysterious. And he was dark and mysterious. I mean, he was just so smooth and he had that kind of weird sense of humor that was in the books that Aragorn had at the beginning of the books and throughout the books. So yeah, I'm Viggo all the way.
And ToniAnn just pointed this out. That's a tremendous movie. Viggo Mortensen really is good in. I don't want to say Stuart Townsend's not good as Dorian Gray in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but okay. Let's talk about we may have touched on this a little bit, but not with you guys a week ago. The soundtrack. That was the first for me. That was the first movie soundtrack in years that affected me. Really hit all the buttons because I don't know, they overall just every individual piece of the Lord of the Rings was like there's good stuff in each bit of it, but the soundtrack. Is there a favorite piece of the soundtrack piece for any of you guys?
Yes.
Sherman.
Two of them. The Uruk-hai and Gandalf Falls. I'm going to have to make a will somewhere and make sure that if at my funeral they'll play Gandalf Falls, because it sounds like a funeral dirge.
Woo! We went there, Joe. Sherman, I'll honor your request as much as possible if I'm able to.
Yeah. All right.
There's something that happened. Something that happened in nerddom about 10 or 15 years before this movie is that you could tell when the Klingons were about to appear by the music. All right. I see a lot of people going, yep. So the Klingons had I forget the technical term, but it's like a trill, a riff, whatever it is. Musicians, forgive me. There's a technical term for a little bitty piece of music that signals something, and the Klingons have a perfect one. In the Fellowship of the Ring and all the Lord of the Rings movies, there's a couple of musical signals that are just beautiful and perfect. Like there's this music that plays that makes you go, "Ooh, I feel bad for Gollum." Right? There's the Smeagol signal music, which is just gorgeous. And the Ring has its own musical little signal, and the Hobbits have their own little musical everything. It's just beautiful. The soundtrack is gorgeous. And if you're going to have elves, you might as well get Enya in there for a couple of songs while you're at it.
Man, you have to. I honestly, I think she actually is an elf. It would make sense if you found out later. Oh, by the way, Enya is elvish.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would be surprised. No one would go,
Sindarin?
Yeah, that's what she actually from. Nobody would go, oh, yeah. No, I don't get it. We're like, no, it's Enya. So, Beth, soundtrack.
Yeah, when I think about the soundtrack, there's not one particular thing that stands out to me besides the fact that not just the visual or the computer effects, but what that soundtrack has done to video games as a whole.
Okay, yeah.
Because not just the computer part of it has done things to video games, but it reminds me of like the first time I played Skyrim and how much being in that world reminded me of being in that world again. So the music helps create the world immersion, and not a lot of movies do that, and video games do that to an extent, but you have to be playing a pretty epic RPG to do it. But they didn't do it like this until after this movie.
Yeah. I did not make that connection until you said that. But I think the influence, in addition to Skyrim, what influences? Because of course, the Lord of the Rings books and the series and all that stuff influenced pretty much everything in nerddom after that. But what have you guys seen in movies or wherever, in addition to Skyrim, that the Hobbit, the Fellowship of the Ring movie has influenced?
Well, I think Game of Thrones is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest influences is how movies are made. I think at the time it was unprecedented that you would film these 3 movies simultaneously and release one per year. And I think in the wake of that, you see that more and more, whether it's the Marvel movies, the Potter movies came out around the same time as Fellowship. So I think those were kind of a 1-2 punch in creating that paradigm. But I think you see it everywhere, especially in franchise films, in terms of how films are made and in some ways how they're marketed. And I also think Fellowship hit right when the internet was starting to hit on a mass cultural level. Like Joe, you said that you had one of the first nerd news sites. How many nerd news sites are there now? And I think Fellowship made fantasy, Game of Thrones came up, made fantasy viable. A fantasy film had never been nominated for or had never won Best Picture. Ian McKellen was nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
Mhm.
Nobody
Yeah.
ever. You didn't get together with your buddies around the water cooler at the office talking about Sword and the Sorcerer.
Yeah.
Should have, but or Excalibur or Dragon Slayer. You'd have like one guy, and you and him would talk, but or her. But it wasn't like everyone went to see Dragon Slayer, but Fellowship of the Ring, everybody saw Fellowship of the Ring.
I also think part of it was timing. I mean, this isn't talked about enough, but Fellowship of the Ring came out like a few months after September 11th. And I think the 90s were very kind of infused with irony. And I think people were really like hungry to watch something that was kind of uncomplicated and had good guys and bad guys and wanted to feel like they could, I think the thirst for escapism into a different world and a less complicated world was off the charts when Fellowship came out.
Yeah. There's if you see and you should, the epic rap battles of history, Tolkien versus George.R.R. Martin, which is awesome. Tolkien crushes him, which is exactly the way it should be. One of the things that Tolkien says to Martin is it's called fantasy. It's supposed to be unrealistic. That's the point. I was like, yeah, that's exactly right. Is one of the complaints of Tolkien's stuff is that it's so obvious who the good guys are and so obvious who the bad guys are. And I'm like, first of all, wrong, and second of all, so.
Yeah.
This isn't a Mission Impossible movie. This is Lord of the Rings. That you're supposed to know who the good guys are so that when they fall off the wagon, you're upset about it.
Yeah.
Right? You're not supposed to be confused about the fall of Boromir. You're supposed to be right there with him going heartbroken, right?
You're supposed to care why Sean Bean dies besides the fact that it's Sean Bean dying in yet another movie.
Oh gosh. I think Sean Bean got a with. He either got a with or an and.
Oh.
So that means that Sean Bean's agent went, okay, wait. If you're going to kill Sean Bean, he gets an and. Don't put him in the alphabetical listing. You're going to kill him. He gets an and Sean Bean's over there going, hey, I get paid more. I'm sure. Kill me. Fine.
He did a series that I think got quickly canceled. Maybe it was more than 10 years ago. But they did a preview. I think it was on TNT or TBS or something. And he acts out a scene at his audition. That's the clip. He's doing the audition, and he does lines back and forth, and he goes, so is this where I get shot? Is this where how about it? And then he took like a sword from somebody and like stabbed himself, and he goes, no, I die right here. And they're like, no, you're the star of the show. And he said, oh, no, they told me that before. I died anyway. What? Seriously? Am I not dying? But the fact that Sean Bean gets it, and I'm sure he's lived through some things, but I couldn't tell you. I couldn't name one. I love it. Legend. Thank you, Lola. Right there at the Legend was the name of it.
I was going to say though, if it hadn't been for the Fellowship of the Rings and the other Lord of the Rings movies, Peter Jackson wouldn't have had the clout to make King Kong, a remake of the 1930s version of King Kong.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Weta would have had the clout to do basically all the CGI on Avatar, because they were behind a lot of that. So that's definitely one of the repercussions of that movie for them.
I think thank you, Kyle, for there you go. He didn't die, but he
didn't die in The Martian either.
There you go.
Sherman, you're exactly right, because they, Weta has become kind of like Skywalker Sound or Lucas Film for certain, they've become ubiquitous. I've watched 7 or 8 movies in the last few months where Weta was somewhere in the credits. They did the armor, or they did the swords, or they did the laser blasters or something. right? They made the monster puppet, something like that. It's like they're in everything now.
Yes.
They don't necessarily run the show like they did with Fellowship, but Fellowship made them ubiquitous, which is great because they're awesome.
If you watch the appendices, Rick McCallum from Lucasfilm actually consulted with them before they made the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
hey, Weta should run the New Zealand government, Lola.
Yeah. Why not?
Hey.
Look, New Zealand seems great. I've never been there.
I
It's
have
a place I want to be.
I did a Lord of the Rings location tour in New Zealand.
Kevin, you asked me to remind you. Thank you for reminding yourself. Tell us this story.
So about 10 years ago, this was before they built the replica Hobbiton that people can go to, which I think is a more photo-friendly experience. Before that was built, I went to New Zealand with my wife, and one of the things we did was in Wellington, we went on a Lord of the Rings site location tour where you get into a minivan and they take you, the first place they take you is the Frodo get off the road spot. And you're like, this looks just like in the movie. And that is the only time you have that experience on the Lord of the Rings site location tour, because everywhere else it's like, you see that tree? Gandalf and Saruman walked past that once. And then you get in the car and it looks small. There's no tower. Then you get back in the van and they play the Howard Shore music and they give you some crackers and say, this is lembas bread. They also give you like plastic elf ears to wear, which no one on the tour wore. And they do take you on a tour of Weta, which was also very cool.
Okay, well, at least there's that.
Well, they didn't build Isengard? What the hell kind of tour is that?
I had very high hopes to at least meet Cate Blanchett, and it didn't happen.
No,
I was promised walking trees on the walking tree tour.
Thank you, Darin.
If you watch The Hunt for the Wilder People, they use a lot of the same locations in that movie.
Oh.
I remember they're like, this is where the Council of Elrond took place, and it's just a field.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff they actually built inside.
Yeah,
that's true. I wish on your tour, Kevin, they had said, here is the Council of Isengard. It was just this green sheet. Here is where we... Do you feel like you're in Isengard? That would have been...
I'm like, I flew 23 hours for this.
There was...
Well, they did make a life-size Moomak for Return of the King, and they had a picnic around it, and that's actually in the appendices as well. So...
Oh my God! A life-size Moomak?
Yes.
Wow.
Moomak is the singular for Moomakil. The big elephant things, the Oliphants.
The Oliphants, yeah.
Yeah.
Machines. Okay, so I have a nerdy question, Sherman. Did they have when they made the Moomak? Did they have hundreds of arrows sticking out of it, or was it pre-arrows?
They did actually. Yes.
What did? Wow. Dude, I have to see this.
New Zealand's beautiful, though. People should go. It's great.
Well, there's a reason why. Yeah, I mean, I was recently watching an episode of Wheel of Time, like you do, and I just couldn't help it. I went, "Oh my! Look, there's Frodo and Boromir in the background back there, and on next to that, because it looked just something in the back of my head went, oh wait, I've seen people climb this mountain before. Hold on, wait. It was. I'm pretty sure it was the same spot for this one.
I absolutely love that. Wheel of Time was a thing when these movies were coming out. And I remember dudes I worked with were like, man, they're never going to make a Wheel of Time thing. Now I want to see that. That'd be better than Lord of the Rings. Well, here we go now, buddy. So, congratulations.
Well, they have it now.
They have it now. Yeah. And it's good. I'm not saying it ain't. But I am tickled that all of these things, that there is so much fantasy and sword and sorcery, and this type of thing is just at our fingertips now. So tell me, let's kind of go back in time a little bit. What at the end of Fellowship of the Ring, before you had seen Two Towers, what were you expecting? What were you looking forward to after you had ingested, after you let Fellowship of the Rings wash over you? What were you hoping for in Two Towers?
So the first thing I walked away with from the first movie was I made the right decision by never getting into Dungeons and Dragons or World of Warcraft, because I got so into, like, deeply into these movies that, like, websites that haven't been up, I pulled up some websites that I used to go to when this movie first came out, and they haven't been updated since 2012. But I was studying Sindarin. I was into it. And I know that if I would be divorced today if I had gotten into Dungeons and Dragons and World of Warcraft as deeply as I got into this movie. But I knew that Helm's Deep was gonna, some stuff was gonna go down, and it did not disappoint when we got there. But just waiting to see what they did with the horse people and the Rohirrim and all of that, I could not wait for any of that. And thank you, Peter Jackson, for delivering.
Like Beth, I never played World of Warcraft for the same reason that I've never tried heroin. And when Fellowship ended, I was very excited. My biggest thing was I was worried about how they were going to pull off Gollum in the subsequent movies, and I think it was as good as it could have been. So I was pretty happy with that. I think Andy Serkis gives one of the great performances in the trilogy. So, but leading up to Two Towers, I was concerned about that. Did any of y'all go back to see Fellowship like in February after it came out to see like the 10-minute Two Towers reel?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I didn't know about it. I'm just learning about that now. But I was a little disappointed Brother Theodore wasn't the voice of Gollum.
Maybe in the Amazon show.
No, I think Brother Theodore's dead by now. Because he was old even when he used to
That doesn't
David
matter.
Letterman back in the 90s.
2022, that doesn't matter.
It comes back to you now at the turn of the tide, Sherman.
Thank you. So, guys, thank you. I hope we could probably go down this path for another hour or two without heading into the West. But did I get that right? I hope.
Yes.
Anyway, guys, thank you for coming and hanging out with us. This is just experiencing Lord of the Rings with a group of people is the best way to do it.
I have a special treat for everybody.
I don't think it's a singular experience. I think it's up there with Star Wars and such, where everybody's going to get something different from it, but the community that builds around these kind of movies, and that everyone can experience this kind of thing together, and also that there's so much of it is a tremendous thing.
Mm-hmm.
Never usually in the past, Scorsese didn't do the one Godfather that you saw and then put out 6 other VHS tapes of all his bonus footage that he should have, but he didn't. And I love that there's just so much of it out there. But final thoughts, and tell everybody where on the interwebs you can be found. Sherman.
I have I'll do this. I've been doing this for years now. I've entertained a few people with it. It's Mum-Ra reciting the ring verse.
Oh my gosh. Yes,
you want to hear it? Ashknaz dur batluk, Ashknaz gimbatul, Ashknaz strakatluk, Agborzum ishe krimpatul.
Oh, it's nerd worlds colliding.
Why did they never have Worf reading Lord of the Rings on Next Generation?
Surely. Jeez Louise.
Holodeck?
So,
Very
Sherman,
good, Sherman.
that's
Yes.
tremendous. Sherman, tell everybody where you can be found on the interwebs.
I can be found in most places at Nerdburger358, like it says there in the corner. There are a few other places, but like Instagram, Facebook, I'm sure under Sherman Burris, Pinterest, and some other stuff I can't remember right at the moment.
It's Sherman's everywhere. Darin.
So my two final thoughts. The first thing, Joe, is that I think these movies are best if you watch them with 8 friends. And I am under contract to say I got to see a fully CGI'd King of the Eagles, Gwaihir the Wind Lord, rescue Gandalf in the Fellowship of the Ring. Awesome. It was so awesome. Okay. So I'm Darin M. Bush, as the sign says. You can find my short stories on the Kindle, on my Kindle page, on my author's page on Amazon. I'm also around the interwebs. And I will probably, if Joe will have me back, be doing the live panels at DragonCon in September. Please. And I think I'm going to be back here next Thursday.
Oh yeah.
There's a rumor I'm going to be here right in this same Bat channel next week.
We will.
One thing about a plot.
We'll see about that. Kevin.
When I was in 7th grade, I once delivered a report to my school dressed as J.R.R. Tolkien. And I wish I could tell that 7th grade me that so many years later, I'd be doing roughly the same thing, only not wearing I'd have actual gray hair rather than wearing a wig. This has been so much fun, you guys. I would say you can find me at gleamingthetube.net. That's where my podcast about movies that involve skateboarding in some capacity can be found. Beth is on an episode. Beth is if you look up the episode about Nightmare on Elm Street 5, Beth is our guest on that, although we spend most of the episode talking about the LL Cool J Kool Moe Dee rap feud rather than the movie, but
it derailed itself. It's not my fault.
Freddie only
skateboards
skateboards in one scene, so
So Kevin, I have to ask a question.
Sure.
You, because of Legolas and his stunts with the shields and everything, do these movies count as skateboarding movies?
I've tried to thread that needle, and there are no wheels on the shield, and I can't do it.
There is on the toy though. There are on the toy version of the shield.
I will go get my crowbar for you, Kevin.
And Beth.
This series of movies was what helped to start the normalizing of nerddom.
Yeah.
And gave us things to talk about with the normals. So, without that, sure, Harry Potter would have been big, but it's not quite the same depth of world building that Lord of the Rings is. So, and it also is normalizing huge world building coming to your media. So still hope for Brandon Sanderson novels to get made into movies.
It's got to happen at this point.
And I can be found hanging around needless things like some sort of golem, but mostly you can find me on Execute Chapter 66, a Star Wars podcast where we talk about Star Wars books. And hopefully on a lot of panels at DragonCon this year.
Oh, we're doing it. We are 100% doing it. I cannot wait to see you guys in person, but the reason we're doing these is because we can't wait. Rather than wait 9 months, we'll just see you next week. Guys, thank you, everybody on the Classics Track, everybody in the chat, everybody who's watching this now or who watches it in the future. Thank you for hanging out with us on the American Sci-Fi Classics Track. We will see you next week when we're going to do the 20th anniversary thing with the first Harry Potter movie. And when we do that panel, we don't know who created Harry Potter or who wrote those books. It's completely gone from my mind. I don't remember.
They wrote themselves. It's immaculate conception of books.
They were magically written.
They were magically.
They're autokatanas.
They reached into the hat and pulled out the books. But guys, that is next week, and For all of our Classic Track irregulars, we will see you next week. Darin, Kevin, Sherman, Beth, thank you guys very, very much.
Namarie.
Soon.
Never thought I'd do a quarantine panel side by side with a bunch of nerds.
How about with a friend?